Alright, let's do this one last time. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, a movie that began production in 2014 after Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the guys behind the Lego Movie, decided to pitch to Sony Pictures Animation a Spider-Man animated feature. Sony said, "You're crazy if you want to make an animated movie about Spider-Man, Peter Parker," and Lord and Miller said, "We're even crazier, because it's not about Peter Parker, it's about this new character, Miles Morales, from the comics created by Brian Michael Bendis that no one's ever heard of. We want to make an animated Spider-Man movie about him. And it has to do with the Spider-Verse." The movie was released in 2018, it won Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, and has been received and loved by millions of Spider-Man fans. And it just recently got a sequel, Across the Spider-Verse, which, if you know anything about me or my channel, I loved that movie to death, and I love this movie to death, because it is such a phenomenal coming-of-age story for Miles Morales, who has been one of my favorite Marvel characters, if not my favorite Marvel character, for almost a decade since I discovered his wonderful comics by Brian Michael Bendis, who is a genius. He writes such amazing, beautiful comic stories, and Miles Morales is really my first comics character that I got introduced to. I went to a comic store, and there they happened to have some Ultimate Spider-Man comics starring Miles Morales as Spider-Man, and I picked them up and I read them, and I was immediately hooked on the character. So when they released that first trailer for Into the Spider-Verse, as you can imagine, I was obsessed with that trailer, and I watched it about 50 times, as well as the full trailer. Just the teaser I watched so many times, over and over again, because I was so excited for the movie. I Shazammed the song that was in the trailer, the first teaser, Home by Vince Staples, and I checked iTunes every single day until the song came out, which the song was released with the movie album, so I stopped checking after a year. But I was checking every day just to listen to that song, because I knew it was in the teaser trailer. And when the movie came out, it was 5 years ago, so I was 11. I remember walking out of that theater saying, "This is possibly the best movie that I've ever seen in my life." It had such a huge, massive impact on me. And since I was 11 years old, I probably didn't understand fully why it had such a massive impact. But now that I'm older and I love to think about movies, it's pretty clear to me why this movie is so awesome, has such an impact on both me and obviously millions of other people. Today we're going to break down exactly what makes this movie so great, because this is the first in a 3-part series that I'm going to be doing called The Majesty of Spider-Verse. In this part 1, we're going to be talking about Into the Spider-Verse, which is one of my favorite movies ever, as well as its sequel, Across the Spider-Verse. And then in the third part, we're going to conclude with talking about why Beyond the Spider-Verse is going to be awesome, even though it hasn't come out yet and it's been indefinitely delayed, so who knows when it will come out. But we're going to talk about all 3 of these amazing movies in this series, so if you want to see the rest of the series, be sure to subscribe. This is only part 1. And comment down below some of your thoughts on things you noticed that you thought were beautiful about these movies, anything that you loved about them, even anything that maybe you didn't love. Be sure to comment all of your thoughts down below in the comments, and subscribe to see the future parts in the series. Hello, my name is Eli Hollingsworth, and I'm just here to remind people that teenagers can think pretty deeply too, and today we're going to talk about Into the Spider-Verse. So let's go ahead and get started. The character of Miles Morales is such an interesting one, because when he was first introduced, he was shunned by the community. People hated the idea of Miles Morales, and I would say to a degree, reasonably so, because the character of Peter Parker is the face of Spider-Man that we've seen for decades. I mean, he was introduced in the 60s, and ever since then, he's been Spider-Man in the main Ultimate Comics universe, which I believe was the main timeline of comics at the time, a decade ago when Miles Morales was introduced. In order for Miles Morales to come of age and become Spider-Man, our web-slinging friendly neighborhood hero, Ultimate Spider-Man, Peter Parker had to die. That was a part of the story. I knew that's what I signed up for when I paid the ticket, or at least when my parents paid the ticket when I was 11, And a very interesting theme in this movie, the theme is anyone can wear the mask. That's the tagline of the series. That's the theme, the presented theme. When you watch the movie, though, it's a very, very heartfelt and very real human coming-of-age story for this character of Miles Morales, who he's 14, 15, so he's of his formative years, as they're called, which I am also currently in right now. There's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of responsibilities and things that come in these formative years. You're trying to figure out who you are as a person. These years, I believe, are the most important years in a person's life, because they determine whether or not you're going to become a drug addict and go to jail and go to prison, all this stuff, or if you're going to be a president of the United States, And so this movie, Into the Spider-Verse, is about Miles Morales deciding who he's going to be. That's the main name of the movie.
A zero? What? A few more of those, you'd probably have to kick me out of here, huh? Maybe I'm just not right for this school.
If a person wearing a blindfold picked the answers on a true or false quiz at random, do you know what score they would get?
50%?
That's right.
Wait.
The only way to get all the answers wrong is to know which answers are right. You're trying to quit, and I'm not gonna let you.
In the beginning, he's at this school, Visions Academy. He does not want to be there, but this is the hand that he's been dealt. He won a lottery with the number 42. 42 was the number that he won the lottery with to get into the school, Brooklyn Visions. And Visions Academy, this boarding school that he does not want to be there. But he's incredibly smart. He's incredibly talented. His dad mentions multiple times he sees this spark. Uncle Aaron tells him that he's extremely talented, and he does not want to be there, but he's smart enough to try to get all the answers wrong on the test because he wants to fail and he wants to leave. His teacher sees this and doesn't allow it, and she assigns him an essay.
I'm assigning you a personal essay, not about physics, but about you, and what kind of person you want to be.
And write an essay about who he wants to be, the type of person that he wants to be. And that's what this movie is about, is Miles Morales deciding what type of person he wants to be. And through the way the events turn out, he also is faced with the responsibility of becoming Spider-Man. And not just Spider-Man, but his own Spider-Man. Not Peter Parker, not Peter Porker, not Penny Parker, not Gwen Stacy, but Miles Morales as Spider-Man, and determining who that is as well. And that also helps him in turn in his everyday Miles Morales life. And this movie is a very, very well-told coming-of-age story, and it does such a great job of creating human, grounded, real characters that you can relate to. Miles Morales, he has a background of his mom is Puerto Rican, his dad is American. He's a normal teenage kid in Brooklyn. A part Puerto Rican, part African American, black teenager. He has an uncle who he visits often, and he loves his uncle, even though his uncle has some dark, mysterious secrets, as we learn through the course of the movie. And he just, through these circumstances, through the culture, and just, Brian Michael Bendis was able to craft a character who instantly, reading the pages of the comic books, almost 10 years ago probably, I just resonated with this character of Miles Morales, because he's real. Peter Parker is real too, just as real as Peter Parker, who also has very normal life circumstance, but Miles is just, I related more to him as a character through the way that he was introduced, just as he's a bit younger, and that was even more shown, just made more real to me, always going back to watching this movie, because Miles Morales' story of growth and his character arc in this movie is becoming who he is one that is just so powerful and so relatable, and it inspires me every time I watch it, being 16 years old. Every time I watch it, I'm just so inspired by the choices that Miles is making. He is just put in these situations where he's forced to grow as a human. He can't back down, and his mom says to him, our family doesn't run from things, and there are times when Miles is scared and he's worried and he has no idea what he's going to do next, what the future holds for him, but he has to make a decision to stand up, take responsibility, which is also a big theme in this movie, which is so awesome, because the main mantra of Spider-Man is with great power comes great responsibility, and every character in this movie has responsibilities that they have to take on, and even in the sequel, Across the Spider-Verse, they have responsibilities that are assigned to them by the hand that life has dealt them. And when they refuse to accept those responsibilities, things go horribly wrong for them. It is only when they accept those responsibilities and take them upon themselves and own them and pursue them and don't run away from them is when they truly become who they are supposed to be. Even in Peter B. Parker, in Miles Morales, who is given this responsibility as he's out with his uncle, graffitiing on the subways, which him and his uncle like to do, an illegal activity that they bond over. He happens to get bitten by this radioactive spider, who Miles is dealt this hand. This is destiny. This is fate. He is destined to become Spider-Man. None of this situation was in his control. He just happened to be at the wrong place, like the wrong time, which is all is required for you to be Spider-Man, is to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, just with a random bug bite, a random twist of fate, and he is set on a path to become Spider-Man. And as MJ says in the movie, and she's giving her speech after Peter Parker dies, Peter Parker chose to be Spider-Man. He was given these powers that he didn't choose to get, he just happened to get them, but then he chose to do good with them. That was the proactive choice that he made, and that's how he became the best version of who he was, because he had this responsibility put upon him. Instead of running away from it, using it for his own gain, or exploiting it, taking advantage of it, he decided to use his responsibility to help people, because he had this great power, and he used the responsibility to help others. Miles is dealt this hand of fate to whether to choose to be Spider-Man, or choose to do whatever he wants with his powers, use them for his own good, or run away from this responsibility. And by the end of the movie, he chooses to run head-on towards his responsibility and accept it and own it and conquer it, as we see him do at the end of the movie when he destroys the super collider, sends all of his friends home, saves the day, and thus solidifies a fact that no one can take away from him, and that is the fact that Miles Morales is Spider-Man. It is undeniable. No one can take that away from him. The thing that boosts Miles throughout this movie is because he is standing on the shoulders of the people around him that love him. His family, his friends, they all boost him to become the person that he is, which is how we all are. We are nothing but the people around us, our family or our friends, who are there for us and love us and care about us. Those people are the people who also are a big part of making us who we are. So Miles is like any teenager. He's not really caring about his parents. He's kind of pushing them off. They have these things that they've set on him that they're wanting him to do. There's these responsibilities that they're putting on them, and he doesn't really understand them. He doesn't understand these responsibilities or why his parents are putting these responsibilities on him, going to Brooklyn Visions Academy, this boarding school that he doesn't want to be at, but he's smart enough to be at, and he can master, but he's just not choosing to because he doesn't understand why his parents are doing this. He's rebelling against his parents. They're putting these responsibilities on him that he doesn't want or understand. It's only when he connects with his dad, listens to what his dad has to say, and understands where his dad's coming from as a parent.
Look, I know I don't always do what you need me to do or say what you need me to say, but I see this spark in you. It's amazing. It's why I push you, but it's yours. Whatever you choose to do with it, you'll be great.
When his dad gives him that speech, when Miles is on one side of the door, his dad is on the other. His dad is telling him that he's trying to parent Miles, and he sees Miles' amazing talents and his amazing potentials, and he's pushing Miles just because he knows that pushing Miles is the way to make him the greatest possible person and human that he can be. And Miles accepts that, and he understands that. It's only then, when he reconciles with the people that love him, his dad, his family, only then does he become Spider-Man and become who he's supposed to be, his full potential. Does he unlock his true self into becoming Spider-Man? It's not just him, it's also the people around him. His Uncle Aaron. He turns out to, with his talents and his potential, Uncle Aaron is using them for wrong, for bad, for his own selfish needs. And Miles was looking up to Uncle Aaron. And Uncle Aaron regrets this, the Prowler, him being the Prowler. He says, I wanted you to look up to me. And Uncle Aaron is obviously, he has some regret that he's carrying with him because he wants to be a good role model for Miles. He wants Miles to look up to him. But he has happened to make some mistakes that he could never undo. And he's pretty much irredeemable at this point, which I know no one's ever irredeemable. But he's lying on the ground dying, so there's nothing he can do at this point. And it's that pushes Miles to also become the greatest version of himself because he sees what will happen if he decides to go down a wrong path, a selfish way. Is even though he looks up to Uncle Aaron and he had this special connection with him, he chose to use his gifts and his abilities selfishly, and that's what made him a villain. Miles' quest to become himself and become Spider-Man and become Miles Morales and figure out who that is, essentially, is in direct contrast to Peter, who, as I mentioned before, when people put off their responsibilities in these movies, they face terrible consequences. Peter B. Parker has put off the responsibility of being Spider-Man, of being a husband, of potentially being a father, because he's scared of those things. Because let's face it, the future is scary. I'm pretty terrified of what's going to come because I have no idea, and the unknown is scary. So Miles is in direct contrast to Peter because Peter is also an example for Miles. You can see that Peter B. Parker and Uncle Aaron are two people who are more similar than you think in the way that they influence Miles and his coming-of-age story, because Peter, he's just at this point in his life where he's middle-aged, he's depressed, he's just keeping to himself, and he has no one around him that is pushing him and moving him forward and motivating him to be the best he can be, because we're not just us, we're also the people around us. So when Peter meets Miles, and Miles starts pushing him and challenging Peter, as Peter is also helping mold Miles into the person that he's going to be, Miles is also helping Peter way more than he knows. And Miles encourages Peter to jump headfirst into the unknown, the things that scare Peter and the things that terrify him, because it's the unknown. It's scary. The future is a very scary thing to think about. And he encourages him to pursue it because he sees that it's worth it. It's worth the pain. It's worth the hardships that come with life and taking on responsibility, once you maximize your potential, then there's hard things that also naturally come with responsibility, taking responsibility for yourself, making hard choices, doing the right thing all the time. There's obviously going to be hardships and trouble that naturally just comes with that, because that's how life works. So Peter is willing to face that, because Miles is also willing to face that now. Miles was not fully sure of who he was. He was pushing off his responsibilities of school and his parents and just wanting to have fun and goof off. And through the course of the movie, by the end, when he's grabbing Peter and he shows him that he has mastered his talents and his skills and he's fully owned his responsibility, he then shows Peter that he also needs to take care of his responsibility, because it's only then that you maximize your talents and you maximize your potential and become the person that you are supposed to be. That's how you become the best possible version of yourself, is by mastering your responsibilities, taking on your responsibilities, not running from things, but running head first into the danger and the unknown and the scared. Gwen also is a huge help to Miles, because she's a friend. She's a romantic interest for Miles. Miles obviously likes her and she kind of likes him. They like each other, and she pushes him to be better as well. She's lost someone in her life that would push her to take on responsibility, and she's kind of secluded. But you need family and friends in your life. You need other people to experience this journey with, because when we're doing this together as human beings, we're social creatures. That's when we do our best work, because we're communing together and we're working as a team. We say, if you're working on your stuff, I'm more than willing to work on my stuff, because we challenge each other. Gwen doesn't really have anyone like that in her life right now, because she's lost her friend, so she's not willing to try again. But after she meets Miles, and Miles is still working out his coming of age and who Miles Morales is and his great expectations, then she sees that maybe there is more room for a friend in her life than she thought, and Miles encourages her to be better as well. So Miles has got all these friends. He's got Gwen Stacy, Peter B. Parker, Spider-Man Noir, Peter Porker, Penny Parker. But then when he is pushed on and urged on by them, the people around him, he sends them all back to their dimensions through the collider, and he's left to face Kingpin, the villain of the movie, all by himself. All of his friends are gone. Who's he got left to stand up with to face Kingpin? He's got this trouble, this hardship in front of him, this responsibility that he's got to take on head on, and now he's all by himself. So he starts fighting Kingpin, and he starts to maybe start losing the battle, but he sees that his dad is there watching him. His dad is there rooting for, not Miles, but Spider-Man. He doesn't know that he's rooting for Miles. And Miles sees that, and how he's able to win the battle is because he sees that his dad is there rooting for him. Because his dad is always rooting for him. Miles didn't necessarily see that until he had that conversation. Well, I guess it was a one-sided conversation, but when his dad was talking to him when Miles was tied up in his room, his dad is on his side, and that's all Miles needs to win the battle. He's spurred on by his family, the people who love him, because they're there for him, they're on his team, and that is what encourages him to win the battle. That is just a really cool, really special message, because Miles is trying to figure out who he is, and that's something that he can only do by himself, right? But it's not something that he can do without the help of the people around him, the people who love him, his friends, his family. They also are a massive part of him becoming who he is, Spider-Man and Miles Morales, and balancing his responsibilities as Spider-Man and Miles Morales, and all the things he wants to do as Miles, but also the things he has to do as Spider-Man that he can't neglect, because then he will have serious consequences. He can't do that without his friends and his family, though. And by the end, he says, when I feel alone and I feel like nobody understands what I'm going through, I remember the people who get it. Those are his friends, and he can't do it without them. He wouldn't have become the great Spider-Man that he is without his friends and his family and the people who love him. His mom, his dad, Peter, Gwen, all the rest. They all are a huge part of him becoming who he is. At the beginning of this movie, when Miles and Uncle Aaron are spray painting, they're having fun, Miles is neglecting his responsibility. They spray paint on the wall, no expectations. Because at that point in the movie, Miles had no expectations of who he should be, who he wanted to be, because he didn't care. He didn't think it was important. He was pushing off what everyone was saying he should be, and really no one else should be telling him who he should be. No one else should be telling Miles Morales who Miles Morales needs to be, or what he should be doing, or what life he should be living. That ultimately doesn't matter. Miles has to decide for himself, but it's not without the help of his friends and family and the people who love him through the course of meeting Peter B. Parker, who is someone who has already rejected his responsibility. But Miles sees that through the events in the movie, that he has to accept his, and when he's willing to do that, that's when he shows Peter B. Parker that it's worth it. It's worth taking the risk. It's worth jumping in headlong into the scary and the unknown. Because it's so much better. The outcome is so much better. Whatever hand in life you are dealt, whatever circumstance you're put in, you have to accept it. Because the reward, once you do and you put in the hard work, is so much better than if you don't. And you can't cheat. The hand that Kingpin, Wilson Fisk, had been dealt in this movie is that he lost his wife and his son. They ran away because they saw him fighting Spider-Man, because he was using his gifts and his talents and his gifts and his talents would be his size, his massive, burly, physique. He was using that for his own advantage. He was being selfish because, as we know in the comics, Spider-Man and Wilson Fisk, he runs this criminal empire, and Spider-Man was fighting him under one of their many escapades. And his wife and his son saw that, and they got scared and left. And they died in a car crash. So what does he choose to do? He tries to cheat the system. He tries to find other dimensions of Vanessa and his son, Richard. And they still are scared of him, even in these other dimensions. So even if he kept trying over and over again, infinite dimensions in the Spider-Verse and the multiverse, keeps trying, getting different versions of Vanessa and Richard over and over and over again, not a single one of them would have worked out in any way. Not just because of the canon events or whatever that we learned in the next movie, which weren't probably an idea at the time of this movie, not just because of that. Just because the way it works is you can't cheat. It would never have worked out for Wilson Fisk because he's trying to cheat the system. Life doesn't work like that. The way fate and destiny plays out, it would have come back to bite him in the butt. There was no way, no circumstance where he could have his wife and son back, because that was the hand that he was dealt. And what he chose to do with his circumstance was try to cheat it or try to change it, which is not at all what you should do. You should face it and own it and accept it, which is what Miles learns that he needs to do by the end of this movie, and that's what he does. And that's how he becomes Spider-Man and becomes Miles Morales' full potential realized by the end of this movie. It's such a great message, and it's just in every ounce of this movie. The beauty and the majesty does not just come from the fact that this movie looks, when you're looking at it, absolutely incredible. Some of the best animation that's ever been put to the silver screen. Even more so in the sequel. Not just that, but even in the intricate story writing that is so beautifully written in such a grounded, real story that everyone can connect to. Everyone can relate to, because the themes and the emotions are just quintessential Spider-Man stuff. I've never seen movies that understand more of what Spider-Man is than the Spider-Verse movies. They totally understand what the character and the message of the character is. Anyone can wear the mask because everyone sees themselves behind that mask, because the struggles and the hardships that Spider-Man is dealing with are the struggles and the hardships that we all deal with every single day. I've never seen a movie that understands that more, that's Into the Spider-Verse and also Across the Spider-Verse. That's where the majesty really comes out in this movie, is in the storytelling, because it's such beautiful storytelling, and that's how anyone can relate to it. And it's so beautiful, and it's the human experience, and I love every second of this movie. It's such a personal one to me in my own personal growth as I'm trying to deal with responsibilities every day. But I know it's worth it also because I know all of you are willing to as well. There's some really great people out there. When we can all connect over a movie like this, does some of my favorite stuff in the world, because I love movies like this that just have these super real human themes and emotions. And it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. Miles takes that leap of faith. It's scary. It's hard. He doesn't know what's going to happen, but he takes that leap of faith. Because all it is just a leap of faith. You don't know when you're ready to do hard things. It's a leap of faith. And when Miles takes that leap of faith into the unknown, into the scary, into the hard, when he faces it and he owns it and he puts in the hard work, that's when the end result is so much more meaningful and so much more beneficial than it ever could have been otherwise. It's such a beautiful movie, guys. I love this movie so much. There's a reason why I've dedicated most of my content on Instagram and on my social media to this movie, specifically because it's really a big personal one. It holds a big place in my heart, special place in my heart. I love the Spider-Verse movies. They are amazing. I hope you love them just as much as I do, and I hope you were able to indulge me and make it to the end of this video as I talk about all of what I love about the story and the intricate writing of Spider-Verse. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like. And if you didn't like this video, I guess, be sure to leave a dislike. But if you made it this far, then you should definitely consider subscribing and turning on all notifications if you haven't already, because part 2 will be coming very, very soon, where I would talk about the majesty of Across the Spider-Verse, which is a movie that I know all of you love, because I love it. It's just as good, if not better, than this movie. And I can't wait to talk about it. So I will talk about that very soon. Be sure to stay tuned and then be turning on notifications so you don't miss it when it comes out. I'll see you guys in that video. Bye.